Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure more people will join as we start, but we've kind of relearned the idea of starting on time. We used to go a little over 10 minutes beyond 7 to accommodate for people to park their cars and join us, but from last time, thanks to an inspiration I received from another event, we always used to pride ourselves with the 90-minute logic. We finish in 90 minutes, but I think we relearned the art of starting on time. So thanks for helping us getting started. And this edition of Bliss Catchers, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Avis Vishwanathan, and this is Vani, my companion in life, my soulmate. The two of us together curate this series, The Bliss Catchers. We have a very interesting context here for today's edition, which is that we celebrate the first year today. Exactly a year ago, we moved into Odissi with the Bliss Catcher program. So it's exactly 1 year since Bliss Catchers came to the Odissi bookstore. So I must thank Team Odissi for hosting us, for getting us, running every month. It's an amazing experience working with the team over here. Ashwin is not here, but his team, rest of the team led by Parandaman, they do a fabulous job. So thank you guys for keeping us going over here. This is also so the Bliss Catcher program was started at a different location, and we outgrew that. We could not hold more than 40 people there at a time, and car parking was a problem. Plus, it was in an open air context, and in Chennai you can't have too many things open air. So we had to move to Odissi, and that's how we came here last year. 29th May 2015 was the first Bliss Catcher program here at Odissi, and so it's 1 year. Now, why do we do Bliss Catchers? There's something very interesting I picked up. I'll share that, but let me give the official line that I always use, which is this program is inspired by Joseph Campbell's philosophy of follow your bliss. And if you really want to understand bliss, I think the only man who has explained it the way I love it is Osho. He says everything in life, there is duality. There is happiness and happiness, joy, sorrow, success, failure. But bliss is the only aspect of living that has no opposite. And so bliss, he says, is when your being is in resonance with the universe. When your being is in resonance with the universe. So he says that it is therefore a situation, a state of being where you are calm, serene, tranquil, yet you are ecstatic. You are immersed in the joy of doing and the joy of living. So it's a present continuous state. And if you reach that state, then you cannot be troubled by anything else that's going on around you. And so I lean on that definition of bliss, and Campbell said, follow your bliss and doors will open. And doors will open where you only saw walls. And only you will be able to see those doors. So we host this series monthly at Odissi, bringing in interesting people who have followed their bliss. And I will lean on another very interesting thought that one of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, who is an entrepreneur and an author, he wrote a very famous book. He's written many books, but one of his most famous works is a book called Purple Cow, where he talks about living a remarkable life. And he says in this book, he says that we all try to save up a lot of money and plan for a vacation. Instead of that, why don't we try to set up a life so that we need not escape from life on a vacation? So set up a life that you enjoy. Set up a life that you love. What is a vacation? Why do you need a vacation? You want to take a break from your routine, from your monotony, from what causes you deep anguish most of the time. And he says, don't live that life. set up a life that you don't want to escape from. And then you will be on a vacation all the time. So that brings us to two interesting people this Saturday, which is Ramani, a very, very dear friend of ours, and Venki. He's got an interesting connection with us, and I will share that also with you. Ramani, we know Ramani for almost a decade now, more than a decade, almost 14 years now. He did the stage decor for one of the programs in our firm. We had an annual get-together, and the theme was, how do we build a world-class company? That was the theme of that annual get-together. We had 40 people working with us all over the country. And so we said, we went up to Hema and Ramani and said, can you do the decor for us, for the event? And we gave them the brief as Sholay and Lagan, two classics that turned the face of Indian cinema forever. And we said, if we want to build a world-class company, let's look outside the corporate world. And so we looked at Sholay and Lagan. So all of us were dressed in costumes from, you could attend that program only if you were dressed as one of the characters from either of these films. And I was dressed as Thakur, not as Gabbar Singh. You know, if any of you thought that, no, I was Thakur. So Ramani and Hema did the decor for us, and that's how we got introduced. But after that, I've been following Ramani's life. He's a great, he hosts some memorable music evenings. He's a good singer himself. But primarily, he's to my rating, and I'm sure many of you who know him and his work, one of the world's finest collage artists. And if it had not been, as this communication would say, if it had not been for his teacher at the Arts College, at the College of Arts, we would have missed, the world would have missed such a great artist. Besides collage, he does textile designing, stage and wedding decor, and he's a writer as well. He writes on art. So we're very, very honored and privileged to have you on our show, Ramani. You're a friend, but today you're a bliss catcher for us, and thank you for being the person that you are. Thank you. Please join us. Please take a seat. Let me now introduce Venki. We'll call him Venki. His full name is Venkatesh Srinivasan, but he's Venki. And we had an interesting, we still have that, a very interesting concept in our firm. And the concept is that when you join our firm, the first thing you have to do is to describe yourself. Not your role, but to describe yourself. And through that description, Vani would work with the new joinee for a week and help the person come up with a title. So our business cards would always have titles and caricatures. So this is my business card. And it's got my caricature at the rear. And my title is Chief Dreamer. So everyone in our firm went by the titles that they chose for themselves that described them. So Venki is known to us because he decided to join our team way back in 2002. 2002. Okay. Oh, so the Sholay Lagan party happened in the year of your joining. Okay. 2002. He's from, he has a background in commerce from Vivekananda College, then went to IIM Bangalore, a place that I could only set my eyes on, but he's been through the, through the program there. He's come out of it, and then he joined Pepsi, and then he applied to my firm to join us, and that was very, very puzzling. I hated MBAs, okay? I still hate them, okay? But Venki gave me enough reason to love an MBA, okay? And so we not only loved him, but we allowed him into our firm. And his title with us was Star Sniper. And that's really what he is, you know? He's a sharpshooter, he's a man of action, does not have too much patience for gyan, but loves action and extremely resourceful. So he worked with us for almost 5 years, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years. Very, very interesting times those 5 years were, because that was the time when our company went through a catharsis and later went bankrupt. But part of the bankruptcy was driven by a strategy that Vani, Venki and I wove together. It was called the Control-Alt-Del strategy, which was, we didn't like the firm that we were running anymore. We'd run into too much of mess. So we decided to bomb the firm. And so Control-Alt-Del was the strategy we carved, and Venki was the author of that strategy. He later disagreed with me on parts of the strategy, but that's his business. He left us and went and worked in the IT and tech sector, for tech services sector for quite some time, worked with Saskin, worked with Loop Mobile? No, Peak Mobile. And somehow found that he could not be away from two of his passions. One is sports and the other is quizzing. Maybe the order is wrong, the quizzing and sports. So he, after 12 years of working in the corporate sector, he quit working for people and dived headlong into entrepreneurship. So he's here heading two ventures. One is Nexus Consulting, which has a lot of fun with Funda, okay? And the other one is Pitch Perfect, where they bring sport to life. So we're going to talk to somebody here who's following his bliss of being in the action with quizzing in a world where there are far too many questions and not many answers, right? So we're going to ask you a lot of questions today on that, Venki. So may I have you join us, please? Thank you. Welcome, Venki, please. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. I can see our other Bliss Catcher friend, Kavita Laya Krishnan, who is a regular. He reprimands me if I fail to remind him about the program in the way in which he wants to be reminded. So thank you, Krishnan, for all the love and for your being here. We also have Ram Kumar, who is our Bliss Catcher for next month. You'll know more about Ram Kumar when you receive the communication, but he's an amazing Bliss Catcher who sought out his bliss, literally. And so he's here with his family. I can see Yadav. Thank you, Yadav, for joining us. And of course, Divakar. I showed you the beautiful business card. Was printed at CompuPrint. Thank you, Divakar. So we're all set now for another interesting and memorable evening. So we'll get started with the first question to you, sir. Okay. The format we'll follow, just for the newcomers, there'll be a conversation that I will have with my guests, and in about 40-45 minutes, we'll throw the floor open to the audience, and you can engage with us. To just make this evening very interesting and special, given that it's our first anniversary at Odissi, let me ask you if you all remember, are you all engaged with us, those of you who are coming here frequently? How many quiz questions are normally asked at the end? Two. So what do you get in return? Mugs. Okay, so good, thank you. So this time, bliss mugs. Yeah, mug full of bliss. If there had been beer, it would have been even better. Right? Oh, fantastic, thank you. So this time we got 4 questions instead of 2. And the 2 special questions can win you a signed copy of my book, Fall Like a Rose Petal. And that's to celebrate 1 year at Odissi. So we have 4 questions coming up. Okay, so stay tuned everybody and enjoy the conversation. So Ramani, my first question to you. I didn't go into your biography in exactly the same way as it happened, but I picked up somewhere that you did your BCom in Delhi, right? And then you chose art as a field of study and moved to Chennai at the College of Arts, right? Government College of Arts. So my first question to you is, I mean, collage came much later, but why did you choose art, and was it difficult or easy convincing your parents at that time that you wanted to be an artist? I don't think you've ever talked about this, or at least I could not find anything on this on the internet. So maybe you want to start there. You'll have to turn on the mic there.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, I would like to clarify something here. I did not do BCom and then come into finance.
Okay.
Soon after school, I would like to say that it's not that, I'm one of these kids now. Today, you find kids are very clear about what they want to do. I had a passion for drawing. It was part of my life. I was doing a lot of drawing, sketching and all that. I think it is destiny because a relative of my mother's who guided me to this College of Arts. So soon after school, I went to note the entrance exam. I didn't know the college like this because I studied in Delhi initially. Then finally I came to Madras and did my 11th. Then this happened and I went and wrote an entrance exam. I just got into the college. So that is what turned my life around. You know, it is not something very conscious decision that I want to pursue art. It just so happened. I'm now coming to the other question about my father being an engineer, and I'm going by the parameters of how people have had their notions about, you know, what is good for the children. He wasn't too happy about my taking up art. It was my mother who supported and said, if his destiny is good, let him pursue what he's good at. So I went and joined this. But my father was insistent that I have to have a degree. So I joined the correspondence course and did my BCom through correspondence. I did not go to Delhi.
Oh, okay.
So I did a correspondence course and did my BCom and got my BCom degree. Okay. And I had the degree certificate back and kept it as it was. Never been taken out.
I don't even know where mine is, you know. But your father sounds pretty much like my father, and I think many other people can relate to that. ஒரு டிகிரியை கையில வெச்சுக்கோ அப்புறம் என்ன வேணா பண்ணு, you know. So that's what must have been the conversation, right?
That was what.
Yeah.
That is why I did the degree.
That's how you did it.
Yeah, with great difficulty, you know. BCom is not something, and all the maths and all the maths just goes over my head. So
But you
I
still,
thought
still passed.
I passed.
Okay.
And I used to get through.
I scraped through too.
Yeah.
Third class. So nevertheless, it doesn't matter anymore. So a related question: when you joined the College for Arts straight out of school, you said you got into it because somebody recommended it to you, and you were good with drawing. So there wasn't a serious, conscious decision that this is what I want to do in my life, right? But what happened through that process of being there? What did you realize about yourself that made you confident that you could pursue a career in art, or did that realization come later?
I think the realization came in pretty soon because the moment I went in there, after the initial couple of months, and you know, the joy that you got out of doing those things, you know, I realized that I had a passion for sketching and art. You know, it was part of my it was there, but it wasn't a deep this thing that okay, this is what I want to do. But the moment I went there, you know, every year we go through that, you know, every morning sketching and drawing and painting, it is sheer bliss and happiness, you know, doing that. Like I keep telling some of the kids whom I train today, when they do portraits, they complain after a couple of times, they say, I've done enough of drawing, can we move to color? But we have done it for 5 years. You know, we started drawing and the entire first year, we were only doing drawings, sketching and sketching and sketching. We come to color much later. So it was somewhere down the line in the end of first year, I think I realized that this is happiness for me.
And this is what you wanted to do.
This is what I wanted to do, and I continue. And I think I enjoyed this thing. And then I must say, I think after all these years, with all the ups and downs, you know, I'm still happy that this is what I did and not BCom. You know, I've been one. I think somebody sitting in some place and complaining about their life, and they said like this, waiting for these vacations and breaks. For me, I don't need that.
Fantastic, fantastic. We'll come back to that part. I think we want to dwell a little longer on the ups and downs of the journey. But the important point he's making is that once it strikes you, many people ask us this question. So how do you discover? How do you know that this is your bliss? And it's a very normal question for people to ask. But only the person who has experienced the joy of being one with the universe, doing what he or she loves doing, only that person will be able to explain that. And you can only explain it to a point. The experience will count more than any explanation will. No, so you got to try it yourself. And if you're not experiencing that oneness, or let me say it differently, if you're not experiencing the feeling of losing yourself in what you're doing, then you need to revisit whether this is really what you love doing. So that's how it works. So for some people it's early, some people it takes time. For me it took many, many years. It wasn't until my mid-30s that I actually discovered what I wanted to do with my life. So there are no hard and fast rules, and there are some people who come and tell us, there's one gentleman here who is not here but who's part of our Blisscatcher community, who actually quit his job after attending the first edition of Blisscatchers in January 2015. He said, this is what I want to be doing. I don't want to be in this IT job. As he said, he would have been very miserable if he had been pursuing a career based on his BCom degree. Similarly, this gentleman discovered at the age of 54 that he didn't want to be in an IT job anymore. And you know what he is doing right now? He is following his bliss of learning the Sanskrit language. He is enrolled for an MA in Sanskrit at the Vivekananda College. I wish Sanskrit College. Okay, at the Sanskrit College. I wish he was here. Suresh Kumaraswamy is his name, and he quit his job at Tech Mahindra. So the next month he came for a Blisscatcher edition, and he said, I quit because I said this was my wake-up call, and I just quit because I wanted to be doing what I love doing, and that's really what he does. And when he's not at college, he's tending to his farm near Vellore. So I think that's a very valid point that you brought up, Ramani, and thank you for that. I'll move to Venki, so we get Venki started on his journey. So I know that we work together, so that part of your life I know pretty well. That you wanted to be that Chamakar Payan who did an MBA and got yourself an MBA from a Hayward school, and then you were restless. You wanted to, so he quit Pepsi to come and join us. So that was a big bragging rights for me and Vani. We had those bragging rights. My executive assistant is from IIM Bangalore, and he worked with Pepsi, and he left Pepsi to join us. So, but he never had any of those notions about the fact that he was carrying a premium B school tag, or that he had quit Pepsi to join a small firm that Vani and I were running. So I wanted to ask you, at what point in your life did you really understand that your bliss, your joy came from? I know you were an avid quizzer. You would do brand equity quizzes. You would go to the landmark quiz. Even now you come to Chennai every time. By the way, he lives in Bangalore, not in Chennai. So he's come down specially for this program, and he's also our first outstation guest for the Blisscatcher series. Okay. So we are going slightly, so next we are, in July we are going to actually have a guest who's not an Indian. So we have an outstation guest, and we're going to have a foreigner as our guest in July. Okay, but back to your question, Venki.
We had Maitri in NRI.
Yeah, NRI. So that's, we'll put her under the NRI bracket. Yeah. So, Venki, my question again to you is, when did you realize that quizzing is your passion? And why did you park it so long, if you had realized it earlier, to, take the deep dive now? Can you just walk us through that process? You need to turn on the mic.
Sure, thanks. Hi, good evening everyone. Pleasure to be here. So, I don't know if I can put my finger on a particular date, point, incident when I can say I flipped a switch and I woke up the next morning and said, quizzing is my passion. Like you said, quizzing, I guess, is one of those things that grows on you, and I think Chennai is an apt city to talk about it because it's probably the most vibrant city in the country for quizzing and related pursuits and so on. So a lot of us pick it up obviously in school, and we go through the intense competitive rigmarole. I look back and tell people that I was never able to make it to my school quiz team ever in Padma Shastri. So it was particularly nice for me when I went back to do a quiz recently. So I told them that this is the only way I could have been part of a quiz in PSBB, which is to come back and conduct it, because I would never make it to the team when I was there. But so the I guess, like you said, I don't know about Samarthya, but the normal course of things happened. Vani is laughing because she knows a lot of my shenanigans. So, but yeah, I mean, it was almost like ticking off one box after the other. School happened, and then But if I look back, I tried to maybe somewhere always there's been a little bit of restlessness and slightly, zany decision making, if I can call it that. It started with taking commerce in 11th and 12th, when everyone said, "Are you crazy with these marks in 10th? You should be doing science." I said, "No, I'm not particularly, pushing my button, so I'll do commerce." And then I applied only to Vivekananda Day College and Loyola Day College with my marks in 12th, because I was very clear that I wanted to do these extracurricular activities during the course of the 3-year program. And whereas a lot of my PSBB batchmates wanted to do evening college so that they could finish CA Inter by the time they finished college, and then in 1.5 years they become a full-fledged chartered accountant, and then life is set and so on. So in fact, after a long struggle, I got into the last list of Vivekananda Day College, and in desperation, I remember when I went for the Vivekananda Evening College interview, right at the end, the principal had one thing to say to me, saying, "If you had applied first, you would have been on the first list. You didn't really consider us and apply, so I'm going to put you on a hold." Anyway, those things happen, and then you go to a tier 1 B school. You obviously have a set of pressures that you are putting yourself through. There is that rigor that ultimately kind of plays a role in how you kind of get shaped up, because you go through a certain structure, a certain process over there. And then it was one job, it was a tier 1 job, sought after job on campus. That happened. Sometimes I just look back and say, people crib about having bad bosses. That's the number one crib, I think, for anybody working in the corporate world, right? That I probably love my organization, I love the brand, but I have a terrible boss. So people say, you join companies but you quit managers, right? That's pretty much what happens. That's exactly what happened to me, and I'm eternally grateful that I had a terrible boss in Pepsi. Right? Yeah. No. So, we do that somewhere else with something in hand. But I had at the same time a great experience, because if I can digress for 30 seconds, a beverages company is possibly like the most humbling way in which you can start your post B school career, because the first 2 weeks you're essentially sitting inside a truck riding along with, it's just you and the driver and the local sales guy, and you are pretty much told, just do this, just go along. You're not coming into any office, you're not doing any Excel sheets, any PowerPoint presentations, you're on the road, you're in the market. And this is what happens for the first 2 to 3 months, right? So it really kind of sets you down on the ground, and then you get to do interesting things. But you can do interesting things only with interesting people, and unfortunately that wasn't the case for me. So I decided to quit and move on, and then decided to take a punt, if I can call it, on Image Equity with you and Vani, and then of course subsequent corporate jobs have happened. I think somewhere in 2010, 11, 2 things that happened. One is that if you keep at it, the 10,000 hour rule kind of thing, if you keep at it for anything for very long with reasonable amount of interest and passion, you're going to get good at it. So after many years of trying, you said the landmark quiz. I think the landmark quiz is possibly the most difficult quiz to qualify on stage into. It used to be held in multiple cities, and after trying for maybe 15 years and never ever getting on stage, so some 300 to 500 teams write a preliminary round and 8 teams get on stage for this quiz, right? I had never qualified on stage. Suddenly in 2010, we qualified on stage in Bangalore and won the quiz, right? So it like blew the socks off everybody, including us, because we didn't expect that. But I think that was some kind of a turning point that people also started saying, hey, these guys are good.
This happened in 2010?
2010. Okay. This happened in late 2010.
And where were you working at that time?
I was working in, I had just moved out, I was working in Peak at the time, which was like just after Saskin. Actually, I just moved to my next job. Moved 2-3 jobs in a short span of time. But I was working in this firm called Above, which was run by a former boss from Saskin. So that's when this happened. And then we kind of, also I formed a thick friendship with a couple of people along the way of doing this. And then finally sometime in 2011 it became kind of very clear. My boss in this company that I worked for came up to me and said, listen, it's very clear you're not passionate about what you're doing. I was the head of sales for that company. I was vice president sales. It was a tech company doing work with MNC customers. So he said, you're clearly not passionate about what you're doing. So I think you should go, you should move on and do what you really like. And don't worry, I'm not asking you to leave tomorrow. I know you'll do your best till the last day you're here. So continue for 2 months, 3 months, whatever you think it takes. But clearly this is not something you're passionate about, so go and do something. So I said, yeah, fair enough. I think that exactly resonates with what I'm doing. So I quit and said, I'll figure out. Kuch na kuch will happen. We'll figure something out, we'll pull some contacts, etc. And then by some amazing serendipity, I got in touch with Anil Kumble, former Indian Test cricketer, great player, great captain of India, great ambassador for the game. And he was starting a company in the sports space around sports education, sports marketing and so on. And completely by chance.
This was called Tenwick.
This was called Tenwick. The firm is called Tenwick, continues to run fairly successfully. And his co-founder in the company used to be a colleague at SaskTech. And he reached out to me and said, hey, do you know someone who you think can join us? We just raised some small funding and we're looking to start up a team. And I said, why are you looking for someone? I can join you. So then, and that's how it happened. So
how long did you work with Tenwick?
I was employee number 1. I set up the team, I set up the processes, recruited the core team, and I worked with them for exactly 18 months. And at the end of 18 months, by that time I had already kind of set up Nexus, even while I was in Tenwick, because a couple of friends and I had started realizing that, hey, we're increasingly getting requests, opportunities where people are calling us and saying, hey, can you come and do this stuff for us? Can you conduct a quiz for us? Can you do something fun for us in our offices or in our house parties or at a pub and things like that?
So your decision to get into an entrepreneurial venture or ventures was not one big event, but small things leading to one after the other.
I'd say
and bringing you to when? 2013?
2012 October is the last time I've drawn a salary from someone. So 2012 November.
So it's been over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
4 years now. Fantastic. I'll just pause here and quickly help us pick up some important points. Follow your bliss and doors will open. Where you need to draw from his story is his boss calling him and telling him that you're not passionate about what you're doing. And I think I will salute a boss like that. I think people that can give you honest feedback about your performance, that can drive you to make important choices in your life, I think it's fantastic, it's awesome. So one, that happened. And the second, that of all things, he gets a job in a company that was focusing on sports. And with one of the most leading ambassadors of the game, Anil Kumble. And I think that's, these are, he called it a moment of serendipity. I call it the magic of following your bliss. Things will happen, doors will open when you are in the right direction and on a path that you love. So that's my important takeaway from your opening point, Venki. I just want to add something here. Remember, we were sitting in a bar in Bangalore, which was called some 80. 1792 or 1782 or 80 on Church Street, at the end of Church Street, St. Mark's Road. And I remember telling him, நீ ஏன்டா இப்படி வந்து சும்மா quizzing நாலேரா ஏதாவது ஒரு quiz win பண்ணிருக்கேடா, and today I'm sitting with him and talking to him about what he loves doing, which is quizzing. So I think the other learning which I can bring to the table here is, although I was critical of you in a very kind of brazen way, I think the learning is that you don't need to necessarily be winning something in order to follow something. I think the adventure itself is the reward. The adventure of following your bliss itself is the reward. You don't need to get to pole position every time to prove to the world that you are following your bliss. So I truly recognize that point now. Thank you, and that came to me and I thought I'll share it with you. I'll go back to Ramani. So we keep doing this back and forth, and then I have a set of questions that are common for both of you. Okay. So Ramani, I have an auditor friend, okay, who tells me and Vani this. Every time you choose to get into a line of business, it's a very complicated line that you choose. How do you manage to go and find such complicated lines of business? Because the first line of business we ran was reputation management, and the current line of business that we focus on is inspiring workplace happiness. So, when I try to understand art, in order to prepare for today's program. And I tried to understand collage, the world of collage. The general perspective that came to me from whatever I looked up is that collage as a genre is not a very benign place to be in. It's not possibly as well understood as it should be understood or appreciated. So my question to you is, how did you come up with collage? I mean, you can please tell us the story of the teacher who asked you to paint without colors, okay? And then take us into why you stuck to this, despite the odds in the genre. What were the odds and why did you stick to it? Or how did you stick to it?
Okay, coming back to the starting point that you want me to talk about, collage again was something which happened to me very accidentally, just as I got into arts. It was the second year of my college. One fine day I went to college and I was sitting there and this professor of mine, Mr. Alfonso Arindas, saw me sitting idle. I was not doing anything in the afternoon session when you're supposed to do paintings, artwork, creative work and all that. So I said, I forgot to bring my colors, I didn't bring anything. He said, then why do you want to sit like this? Go get some magazines or papers. So I just went around the college, picked up whatever I could lay my hands on, I came. And then he said, now, he showed it to me, tore some pieces. And then he said, now stick this. This is how you do. And this is a medium called collage. So it really hit me because I always, at that stage I was thinking, okay, it is only through colors, painting, that's something you're going to be doing. And this was something very interesting that suddenly, thing which you normally keep reading and discarding, and suddenly you find that you can put it to a different use. So it really hit me hard. And then kind of gripped me, and I did a couple of collages then. Then, as we progressed, we continued painting and finished college. And once you finish college, like he was talking about being a commerce student, and people were talking about commerce not being the thing. We were at the bottom of that ladder. Okay, art was never considered a viable proposition at any point. Today, of course, there are a lot more opportunities, and it's a more accepted profession and a lot more opportunities. So when went back to painting and all that stuff, was doing all that. And soon after college, because art was not paying, I'm talking of the 70s, 77 I finished. Madras had no concept of art, there were no interiors, no kind of appreciation for art. So I had to take up a job. I took up a job in Delhi. I went to Delhi Cloth Mills as a textile designer. So that is again another thing, because when I went into the completely new world of textiles, I found it very interesting. It was just adapting what has been taught. So basic, that is what I keep saying, the basic grounding that the college provided us in the grammar and basic techniques that we learn comes in useful, and I think it's helped me through all the various fields that I've worked in my life. Everywhere the grammar is the same, how you use it according to the medium that you get into. So when I went into textiles, I worked on textiles. After a point of time, again, like I was not happy being in a job, completely working 9 to 5. In spite of the creative field that we are in, there's still some restrictions which was not too happy. So with that, I started to freelance. And it's a long journey of various fields, I think we won't go to that in detail. Then suddenly again in between I realized...
So just to get the timeline, so when did you quit your job, the last job?
That was in 81.
81. So from 81 you've been on your own?
I've been on my own.
Okay.
So I used to work on opportunities that came my way. And it's been very interesting because suddenly things would happen, Once I was thrown into a company called Bifora, which is a clock company. I had no clue what to do for clocks. But I was asked to design clock dials and things like that. And a very interesting experience happened there, which I think might be of interest. Because how you solve certain problems also. I was stuck with this model of a clock, which they had produced in a large quantity. They were not able to market it. It was a brown dial, rectangular model, molded, plastic molded thing, and I was asked to redesign it. Now the restrictions were I could not touch the dial because they're not willing to spend on a frame for that. I could not do anything within that dial space also to add color, something. Everything is set. Okay, now what do I do to make that model set? So this was a big challenge for me, and I said, what am I going to do? It on breaking my head, and somewhere, I think you throw these questions and you keep waiting, the answers somewhere come to you, It's not necessarily that you look for it, but the answers do come to you. And I realized that happening in every field that I've worked in. Answers just crop up and suddenly things happen. So suddenly an idea came, and what I did, I took a piece of board, I put a long piece of board, I created a buckle kind of a thing in metal, fixed it onto the wood, and then placed this dial into the center. So it became like a hanging watch. So it was done, that was the design input that I gave, and it worked very beautifully. But unfortunately, of course, like I said, there also the company has to react. They did not react to that. Which would have actually helped them sell the products. It did. Much later, about a year later, I think Titan took up, and then you had this hanging watches and all psychedelic colors, which is such a big hit. So things like this keep happening. So that's what I said, these. Then I came back to collage because I suddenly realized.
So you tried textiles, then you went to multimedia. And
I went to multimedia,
and then you came to collage. Came back to collage.
Not only this one, I also went into stage design decor. I'm very interested in music and dance. I'm very passionate about music and dance. So that led me to meeting all these people. I used to go and meet. I used to be a regular in all these morning sessions at Music Academy and Krishnaran Sabha. So slowly got to know the dancers, musicians, and the organizers. It led to me doing the stage decor for programs. So I did the stage for settings for all the dancers, Chidambaram, Natyanjali, and so on, various things. Then suddenly, somewhere I realized I was moving away, I was not doing much of my art. All these things, because these are the things which are giving you a little bit of money and you have to look at it as a profession, survival and all that. But somewhere the calling for art came back. Okay. So that is how I came back to collage.
So around which time was this when you
This was around 97.
Okay.
97 I came
So
back.
almost 15 years after leaving your last job,
Yes.
you tried multiple things,
Yeah.
and then came back to collage because you truly believed in it and you found your bliss there. You had found your bliss there.
But that came also because there was a competition which was being held by the Tamil Nadu State Culture Department. So I wanted to take part in that. The desire to do that. So that's when I did a collage for which I got a state award, which is called the Navaraja. So that then gripped me, and then I started pursuing collage continuously after that. So it's been an ongoing thing.
Fantastic, fantastic. I want to just pick on a couple of perspectives here. Very interesting. When you don't know something, the answers will come to you. He said that, and I think one of the biggest failings of humankind is that we rarely let go and accept that we don't have answers for many things. We think we have to be in control. And I think only when we let go and accept, letting go here actually is from an immense position of humility, of understanding that there are some questions for which you don't have answers. And I think when you don't know what to do, the answers will come. And I can relate to that totally. You're talking about it from an artistic perspective. I'm talking about it from a deeper spiritual and life-related perspective. So that's one thing I want to pick up. But I want to go back to you, Ramani. I want to dwell a little bit on that 15-year journey. There must have been multiple facets to that journey. From 1981 to 1997, let us say, 15, 16 years. One facet would have been purely materialistic, which is that you have to keep the home fire burning, right? So you had to try whatever assignments that came to you in the field of art, music, textile designing, whatever, right? The second side would have been, was there any restlessness? Were you kind of were very brief about it, that you felt a longing to go back to art and that to collage. So, did you have to think too much to take this decision, or was it a natural progression towards collage? As in, were you able to satisfy yourself that if I do collage and I don't get income from other streams, it's fine, but I want to do collage? Did you actually go through that process of conversations with you, within you, and with, let's say, with Deva?
No, it was more, I think, a natural progression again. And even the 15 years that I was working in other fields, though I was doing it because this were areas which is getting me some money to keep this thing going, but nowhere did I feel any frustration, because each of the fields that I went in was a creative field. I enjoyed working on each and everything, and each of the department, each of the things that I went into had its own challenges, it had its own exciting possibilities, so it was more of a learning process for me. So the frustrations that we went through, even in all these fields, in spite of the money that came in, there were a lot of problems that would arise, money not coming in and people not accepting. See, art is not valued in our this thing, So even when you do stage settings, wedding settings, even when you do stage, the organizers will come and ask me, the material is costing only so much, why are you billing me so much? Okay, they forget that there's something called a design input. I have put in my time, there's no value for that. That is continued, ladies feel it, so that has always been there. But I have always enjoyed, it's been a very learning experience for me. So each of this thing. And I not really wanted to get back to collage in that way. It was just a natural progression. I think that motivation came in that exhibition that, when I got back to art, then I decided, okay, I must continue.
That's when you did Navarasa.
That's when I did Navarasa. So the Navarasa got me hooked, and then I realized the possibility that the medium itself excited me. See, for me, now after this thing, I realized collage is such an exciting medium, because I am doing something which is very, very creative and very satisfying. I know with the training that we have been given in the College of Art, I have all the necessary talent to paint and create what I want to do. I can express it with colors and the drawing and line. Okay, now you take away that image and recreate another image. So the possibility and challenge is much more. So the creative happiness which I get in collage, I don't find it. Today I do some paintings also. When somebody asks me, for something I do. But the joy I get when I do my collages, I don't think I get it when I do my paintings.
Fantastic. Do you lose yourself in the process of creating a collage? I read somewhere that it sometimes takes you a couple of months to find the pieces of paper that you need to put together to create a Ganga, for example, or a Gopala. It is a very demanding process. So, but do you lose yourself in the process?
Completely. I always say, I don't do much of the prayer, meditation, yoga, nothing. I don't do any of those. For me, it is work. When I sit with my paper, when I do that, ultimate bliss is that. You are in communion with that particular thing at that point of time. It is only the images. It is only you and that paper there. It's sheer bliss. I don't think anything else can come close to that, because everything else you're doing it for a purpose. The other fields that I work on, there's an end to that. You have to satisfy somebody. You're doing something. Here, no, it's only me and my art there. So it's a sheer, absolute high point of bliss, I think. Which
awesome. This is like they say in IPL. This is like the turning point of the conversation. It's so beautiful. I don't want to take away its beauty, but I just want to share here what Osho has said. And if you connect it back to what Ramani just said, you will find it very, very beautiful. Osho says, when the dancer becomes the dance, then magic happens. So here he is talking about the communion with the medium. When he's working on other stuff, there is an end goal to be achieved. There is somebody to be pleased and satisfied. Here, just the process of engagement, the communion is bliss. Fantastic. I think he deserves a round of applause for that. I'm going to come to the flip side of bliss very quickly. Okay, the more I don't think there is a flip side, but from a worldly sense, we need to discuss that a little bit. But I'll go to Venki. Venki, your venture is now 3.5 years old, right? And how do you deal with this situation that quizzing in India is normally seen as a celebrity activity? Okay, thanks to Siddharth Basu and Derek O'Brien for bringing it down to center stage in that sense. So it's more like if you were to tell me you were hosting a TV series, I'm sure you would be a lot more popular and famous than you are right now. I hope you will host a TV series soon. But that's the way quizzing is looked at. And you took that model and demolished it and looked at it from a completely innovative approach of taking it into corporates. How were you convinced that this was going to work? Because I'm asking you also because you are an entrepreneur, you got to keep cash flows going and you got to keep running an organization. So how did you take that deep dive to get into quizzing and demystifying it and making it an acceptable activity for a corporate to pay up for, to buy your services? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about how exactly is your service offering position, and then answer this question.
Sure. So when we started, and Nexus is the older of the two firms, and we've been operating.
So Nexus is the quizzing firm.
Is the quizzing firm, and Pitch Perfect is the
sports
firm, and both have been full-time operational for almost exactly 3 years now, or getting to be 3 years sometime in July. When my partner in the firm also quit his job and came on board full-time. When we started, all we knew was that, hey, we are passionate about quizzing because we've quizzed from our school college days. We've conducted a few quizzes here and there because someone's called us and said, hey, come and conduct a quiz, it sounds like fun. But we really didn't know, is there even a business out there for something like this? A lot of people gave us this piece of sage advice saying, you are confusing between your hobby and your business, and you can never make your hobby into a business, and why are you doing this? So we said, no, we don't know that. What happened is when I came out of Tenwick and I started on my own, for about 6 months, I was kind of tossing things out there, flipping coins in the air and figuring out what responses are, what are people saying to something like this, how are they going to take it. And over 2013, once my partner Vivek came on board, and through 2014, and in that interim, I also set up Pitch Perfect, which was a sports-based, learning firm. Suddenly, kind of realized that the commonality for me between both these organizations, and it's two firms, on paper, but it's essentially one amalgamated organization in that sense. And I bring the common thread. I realized that the common thread is, hey, the whole concept of learning is never ending, right? And it's very exciting to take this in new formats to people. Because we realize that, I have sat through enough training sessions, PowerPoint presentations, lots of lectures, lots of 2x2 frameworks, lots of grids, things like that, Excel sheets, and so on. And that's obviously one undeniable time-tested way to impart knowledge and create engagement. But we said, hey, increasingly we realized, and one kind of insight there which came from somebody was that adult learning is a lot about vicarious learning, right? I mean, the reason why everyone's sitting here, for example, missing their Saturday evening is to kind of hopefully take away something from Ramni's experiences or my experiences or your experiences. Because once you get to a certain point, then you want to learn by listening to someone. You want to learn in a manner that's engaging, right? And we realized that right from kids all the way to adults of any age, if you package and deliver things which are fun and create engagement through that, at the same time, meet objectives that are needed to be met in terms of things that need to be told or taught, if you want to call it that, then there's a great opportunity out there, right? So we have tried to kind of approach this whole thing from lesser of a game showy kind of perspective, which is, I keep saying, I know you're his most ardent fan, so am I. Amitabh Bachchan has, single-handedly kind of got quizzing into the big mainstream popular consciousness in India with KBC, but he's also at one stroke killed it for anybody else to try and do a TV show around quizzing, right? Today, I have gone up and down enough TV channels and tried to pitch stuff and so on, and it's clearly impossible to kind of meet that stature and that format and things like that. And so, so to go back, so we've approached it from this very content perspective, which said it is content that will kind of create engagement. It is content that can be made fun and delivered. So in both the firms, so in Nexus, it's about saying, hey, I'll do a quiz for you. It will be in a format that's competitive. We've also realized that at any age, and you'll find that when we ask the 4 questions now, right, the joy of being slightly competitive than the next person next to you and answering a question, and whether you're winning a mug or you're winning a voucher or winning a cash prize, there is some level of satisfaction in that never goes away, right? Which is why even when you see KBC, you want to answer the question and say, hey, I know this, right? So that's something that we play on. We say that, okay, we keep the competitive element alive. That's the best way to get people engaged. We will not dilute content. If we are doing something, say for an insurance company, we will tailor-make content such that it makes sense for them and it's not completely off the wall. At the same time, we'll kind of make sure that we kind of create that optimality between fun in terms of format and fundas in terms of content, right? Which is why we say fun with fundas and that. And then when we do the stuff with sports, it becomes a lot more easier because I do the same format that we are doing. I have an iconic sportsman and who kind of shares her or his experiences about what they've done in the world of sport. And then we try to construct or marry that with real issues, life issues, organizational issues.
We call it Bring Sport to Life.
We call Bring Sport to Life in 2 ways. So one is taking learnings from sport and applying them to life, and sport offers obviously fantastic learnings, that you can take. The other is that, I keep saying we try to transform celebrity experiences into cerebral experiences. So you meet, I did an event with Mr. Prakash Padukone, for example, last weekend in Goa. So it's one thing to meet him, and obviously, if you're people of a certain age and vintage will recognize that this was possibly one of the pinnacle of individual sporting achievement ever in India, and then obviously now everyone kind of knows him as also the dad of one of the most successful actresses in the country. But to listen to the man talk about his roots, where he came from, what he did, why he did what he did at certain phases in his life, and the ability to then take that and marry that with real takeaways for the audience. And we stay away from being preachy about all this, right? So the idea is to say, hey, you individually take away what you want to take away. But the joy is in, again, putting that together, presenting it, curating it, delivering it.
So again, you're talking about enjoying the process of disseminating learning in creative packages.
Absolutely.
That's your bliss in a larger sense, and not just quizzing in sports.
Sure, yeah, I very much say that because it is about that whole process. It is about, like I said, I realize that my passion lies in this whole thing of learning and education and making it fun, engaging and interesting. And quizzing.
How big is your company now in terms of numbers of people?
We are about, we started as 2 people, just my co-founder and I in Nexus. Till about 6 months back we were 3 or 4 people. We are, as on today, 15 people.
15 people?
Yeah.
Between the 2 firms?
Between the 2 firms. Yeah, in the other firm I just have my co-founder and myself. So
it's about 15 people.
It's 15
so
people.
So how do you deal with the nitty-gritty of bliss? Okay, I won't call it the flip side, I'm coming to Ramani also with the same question. How do you deal with the fact that there may not be light at the end of the tunnel sometimes in a physical sense, in terms of cash flows, visibility, clients? How do you deal with your insecurities? Do they crop up? Have you ever felt in these 3 years that you want to quit and go back and take up a job?
Never. I haven't taken a salary from the firm itself except in the last 1 year or so, right? So eaten up savings, initially did some consulting gigs to keep it going and things like that. Moments of despair do happen because, like you said, I mean, there is a reality out there that if you have to take this passion and translate it into a business, the reality of running the business doesn't go away, right? That's very much there. Unless you have all the money in the world and then you're following your passion, in which case you're probably just like following a whim more than a passion, I'd say. But so that reality is there. That reality manifests itself in, hey, I have a teacher appointed in a school. She hasn't turned up. How am I going to substitute that, right? I have to turn around 100 questions for a book tomorrow, and my team's lagging behind. How am I going to get an extra day from the client? The power is not working and the UPS has gone down. How am I going to solve that problem, right? It happened, right? A couple of people lost a couple of $100 which they claimed they'd left around in the office. Last week, 4 new people joined our company, and the third day they said we had left our wallets and bags in a particular room and like a couple of $100 were missing. Right? So crazy things like this can happen. And of course, you have to meet a payroll every month, right? And you have to make that happen. So I think I realize I'm very practically, I'm tuning myself that way. If I don't get the business nitty-gritties right and I don't get the business reality right, the passion will not sustain for a longer period of time.
Are you aware of that? Are you conscious of that?
I'm very conscious of that. I'm very conscious of that, and not at all under any illusion that this can work in isolation with the other. It can if there isn't an economic angle attached to it, right? So the moment you go into that, and we've discussed this a lot of times before, and it's something that's always stayed with me from having read the Good to Greats in those days, which is the whole hedgehog concept of saying, can you be number 1 or number 2 in the world at what you're doing? Are you really passionate about it? Will it make you money? And if you can do all of this, this is the space that they say a company should be in, and I take it to say that is the space that an individual should be in. Right? There is a conscious thing that has to work, because.
So the way you're looking at it is, you've never felt like going back to taking up a job, but you're very cognizant of the reality of running a business, and you would work overtime to get it running well, rather than go back to a job.
Yes,
would I be right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I don't get it running well, then the inevitability is that 15 people lose their jobs, and we have to go back to our jobs.
Right.
And but we've always said that we'll stay core to what we are doing. Right. We started this with a reason. We want to do something in a particular space, and we'll stay core to that. So the thing I won't do, for example, is if a corporate says bring in a stand-up comedian and do an event for me because I want to fill up a slot in my offsite in the evening, I tell them, listen, you can go ahead and find someone else to do that, because that's
so
not.
You stay core. This is very similar to what Rajat Nair told us in January at the Bliss Catcher. So I'm picking up some common threads here. What keeps you going, Rajat, was my question, and he said, I don't want to go back to Mumbai traffic. So he's very happy running his slow travel firm out of Chennai, covering Tamil Nadu and Kerala. But the reason why he'll continue to keep doing that is to ensure that he doesn't have to go back and look for a job in Mumbai and get stuck in traffic. So it's pretty much very similar to what he said. Ramani, how you've been doing this for 39 years, a lifetime already, out of which you've had 2 children grow up, put them through college. How do you deal with your insecurities? Are there insecurities? Are there conversations you have with yourself about where is the next check going to come from? How can we do more business with art? Because that's your field work as well, right? How do you deal with these questions? And are there very stressful times? Obviously there must be. So how do you overcome them? What makes you forget all that and move on?
I would say that throughout my life, the insecurity has always been there, because right through I've always gone, I don't know where my money is going to come in from. So it's always been there at every field, So you take up something which is going to get you money, it's there, it's always there. The pressures are there, the tensions are there, it's all there. But I think the balance also comes in from the creative process, which kind of evens out, the satisfaction that you get, kind of evens out the stress. But the more than me, it is the family which I think goes through a lot more stress, my wife Hema has been very supportive of the whole thing. It's very stressful for her because you don't know where your next, the money is coming for the next month's this thing. Are we going to pay the school fees, you know? Are we going to get through college? The pressures are always there.
But have you felt ever defeated and lost because of this situation, or has art helped you deal with it?
I think art helps me deal. So I go through all this process of pain, and a lot of times you go depressed, get into a depressive mode. But it is something which I bottle up and keep it to myself because otherwise it's going to be very difficult. You know, it makes it, you know, already because the family is already in stress, so you don't want to add on to that. So that is always there at the back. But I think the art kind of balances. Somewhere gives you that, you know, the
it's like therapy. It gives you.
It's, yeah, it kind of gives you that
up.
positive thing to, you know, get you through that the pains that you. It's something we encounter every day. Even with collage, okay, it's not such an accepted medium. So I don't know whether my work is going to sell. I have an exhibition. How it's going to be taken. It's all there. Okay? But I have no regrets about doing any of the work that I've done. I've done some works which, you know, even today, when I go back and see the Navarasa which I did in 97, okay, the joy that I get out of it is phenomenal. You know? It's just willing, kind of unwilling to, you know, overlook all the problems that are there because I know I've done something which is very, very satisfying, you know, which is, I'm true to something I've done. So that joy is, I think that art is what keeps me going through all the pains. The pains are always there.
Pains are there. Pain is inevitable. You know, the fact that if you are created and you are born and you are here, you cannot avoid pain. So the Buddha says pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So suffering is a human condition, you know, human invented condition. So again, I'm picking up something very beautiful from what Ramani said. The joy of having done something that is there, you know, that you created. I think the joy of creation, in your case, you know, in such a difficult medium like collage, you know, difficult both from the point of view of your expression and also difficult from the point of view of market appreciation. You know, Campbell says this very beautifully. He says, if you, you know, if you follow your bliss, something inside you will tell you whether you are centered, whether you are on the beam, or whether you are off the beam. Okay? So if you're centered, you're truly in the zone of bliss. If you're on the beam, you're what Venki pointed out, you know, where you can be making money doing what you love doing. But when you're off the beam, Campbell says, you'll make a lot of money perhaps, but you would have lost your life. So in the case that you are in the center, chances are that you may not make enough money, but you would have lived a very, very beautiful life. And you would have lived with total joy. I think I can totally relate to that statement from Ramani, you know, from what he said just now. Because Vani and I go through it all the time, though ours was by sheer accident that it happened. I would say a cosmic accident. We didn't go and get into the situation, you know, wittingly, but quite unwittingly we got into the situation in which we find ourselves in. But through that process we discovered the value of being happy doing what we love doing. And that is why, you know, I always say that it's always better to follow your bliss early on in life so that you can become a master at that game and so that your economic engine kicks in. You know, the point that Venki was making. So, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, the two of you. But we'll now take questions from the audience. We have time for about 4 or 5 questions. So, we'll keep it 5 and then we'll go to because we have 4 quiz questions this time as opposed to 2. So, keep your questions brief and focused. Over to the first question, please. Who's got the first question today?
What is pitch perfect?
What is pitch perfect?
So that's the sports organization. So the essential idea is, like I was saying, the tagline or the offering is essentially bring sport to life, which is to say that bring in iconic sports people, draw on their experiences, curate that engagement, and deliver meaningful takeaways for corporate audiences. So we work with we work across the board with the likes of Prakash Padukone or Saurav Ganguly or VVS Lakshman or Anil Kumble, get them into a forum, give them context about what the organization group is, and try to kind of map their journey, their experiences, their key moments. Sometimes we do a little bit more with it by writing out a case study about something that they've done, and then try to use that to create this whole management lesson, if you can call it that, for the audience.
Does the company's corporate explain area?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a lot of times it's either a thematic that the company is trying to roll out. So it could be something like innovation, for example, which could be a company-wide theme that someone's trying to roll out. Sometimes it could be a specific problem area, like you said, like say integrating multicultural teams and getting them together. Or it could, most of the times it's around leadership, right? Around challenges of leadership, how does one face losses and rebound from that? The typical, lessons that sport would possibly naturally give you.
Next question, Raj.
I have a question to Raghu. I always feel that when you do collage, we use somebody's already printed thing. So, I mean, how it is in terms of copyright, how it's work? We are using some cuttings from one magazine. So, what is your answer to that?
I don't see any kind of copyright issues coming into my this thing, because I don't use verbatim the images as such. I tear them into pieces and then recreate, So I take up certain images. I don't take it in the full context that it is there, So the copyright thing, I don't think should come in at all. I'm not cutting and pasting that. I'm creating something else. I'm using that image, and then very often I tear the images, I take it out of context, and then use it somewhere else. So I don't think there's major issues on that copywriting thing. Because I don't use it directly for somebody to say, hey, it's mine, Like, the way it's done.
Yeah.
And I also like to add on, as far as copywriting is concerned, I don't think it is of any this thing in our country today, okay? You do a design today, the next moment somebody copies it. Okay? Yeah, and it's been happening, okay? You go, there's a Ritu Kumar who's creating something beautiful. You'll find next 10 days later in the markets of Delhi, copies of that. It happens with all of us. So I think, I believe in that very important thing which I believe Rukmani Devi said, I mean, when she did the saris for Kalakshetra, people came and told her, I believe that, your designs are being copied. And she said, oh, is that so? I'm very happy about it. Which means, good taste is spreading. Okay, I think it's such a fantastic thing. Say, somebody is going to take something I've done, created something, somebody's going to copy. So be it, And I'm very happy that, I like the problems that he's talking of. Financially it might be a kind of thing that we've not got the kind of things that you should get. Art is not giving you that money, the monetary terms, you don't get it. But in terms of creativity, it's a great this thing that God has given me that kind of this thing that somebody copies a design, so what? He's giving me another idea to create something else, So the moment somebody copies, it challenges me to do something else. So I think the creativity keeps growing, and that I think is the biggest wealth that I've got. So I think it should really matter that copywriting should matter.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll just come to you, but on that point, just many people ask this question and are very confused, and they get very keyed up. That saddens me a lot, that they get keyed up about their copyright, about their ownership. I think if you look at it, somebody said this, so this is not an original. There are 26 alphabets in the English language, but there is only one William Shakespeare. So, if you really want to be memorable, create work which is, which cannot be rejected by the customer, by the market, and which cannot be refused, by the customer. So the competition cannot imitate you, and the customer cannot refuse you. Create work like that. That's what value creation is. What will ensure both memorability and no copyright issue, right? Not copyable. Yes.
This is a question that has stayed with me almost all my life. This question is to you, Ravi. You have worked in a variety of genres under the large umbrella of art and culture. In your experience, do you think that had you stuck to one medium, you would have delved into the depths and perhaps achieved greater fame, name, whatever? Or do you think, on the contrary, that all the experiences have added richness? I mean, this is my life experience that makes you ask this question, because I have gone back here too.
Okay, I think the various fields have definitely been enriching, because each field that I've gone into has posed its own challenges, challenged my creativity and pushed me to do things, which have been very interesting. And like I was telling, certain things just happen, like I was doing a stage setting for which I wanted a particular colorsome kind of a thing, I'd done a temple ball and I was stuck with the thing because I didn't want to, the color that I used material, I could not use brass or wood which would go with that. I was just breaking my head what to do. And the answer came out of nowhere. I was walking through Mylapore when I saw this planted flower, Viraco, which is the exact color I used for the fabric. I used that as a colorsome and it worked so beautifully as a colorsome. It became a signature statement in all the weddings and Chidambaram Natyanjali that I did. In fact, in the reviews and all, they mention about that particular Viraco. And I can't take great credit for things saying it was my creativity that happened. It is just an answer to my call that came through the universe. So I can't take credit for that. And coming to the other point, I don't know, probably if I continue in one particular area, probably out of, from the greater success. But there's also the thing, I think there's also, I believe there's also that doing things at the right time, something called the right time which happens. So when you do certain things ahead of time, you're left behind and you don't do it. So if you pursue it, probably I would have done that. I started doing weddings, in the early days, it was only Tarani was doing and I started. Probably if I continued seriously pursuing that with more, giving away everything else, probably I would have become one top wedding designer today. It's not happened, but I have no regrets about going to the other fields. One way they monetary wise, yes, I would have given greater success. So I can't really answer whether this way or that way, Both could have. I could still say I could also achieve success as a multi-dimensional guy. So it can work both ways.
I think the larger perspective we need to hold is that the master plan has no flaws. I don't know if there is a God, okay? But I believe that we are all very unique SIM cards created. Each SIM card is unique, we are all unique SIM cards. And there is no flaw in the master plan. So, Ramani is meant to be Ramani. And I am meant to be me and he is meant to be he. So, that's the way it works. And the other point that Ramani was mentioning, which is about, trying to dabble in multiple fields, okay? I don't think any experience in our lives should ever be construed as a waste. We are put through different experiences primarily for learning, and I think every experience in some way contributes to what we will do later on in life. The dots always connect back in some way. Yes, Ati, your question. And we have time after yours, but just one more question.
Sure.
Which is
you said that it's better to find it early on in life. There are people like Boman Irani, there are people like Susan Boyle. Have you heard of Susan Boyle? The lady at the age of 47 started singing and she became a sensation. They find it much later, nearing middle age or more. Now, is it impossible to find it and be successful in our country to that extent than it is in other countries? So what is your opinion, all of you? This is the question to three people.
Well, my simple answer is let's not get confused success because it's an extremely relative measurement, okay, that people hold for. There's a measure of success that people hold which is very relative, okay, may change from person to person. So I don't want to confuse the argument between success and bliss. Is it possible for people to find what they truly believe in, what they truly love? It is possible if they are nurtured with the idea of following their bliss early on. the way our education system today works is you're first asked to take care of or degree vaangu or velaye vaangu. So it takes you in the wrong direction. And then by the time you have, had your children, raised a family, bought a house, and today the bragging rights are, does your building apartment have a swimming pool, and does it have covered car parking and all that stuff, So the EMI ticket is 50K than on EMI. Okay, so people want to brag about higher EMI. So adalla mudinjittu varumbodhu middle age aayirudhu. I'm not talking about Susan Boyle or even Kushwant Singh found his bliss in writing only after the age of 40. Okay, so I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people who want to do something else but are stuck in this economic engine racket that they're trying to fulfill. So I will not confuse the two issues. Any thoughts between success and bliss?
Yeah, no, regarding success, I would like to share something which my wife, she was asked this question, now what does your husband do? So she said he's an artist. And they said, is he successful? She said, yeah. But she said, I have not heard his name, he's not listed like Member Hussain and all that, I have not heard his name. So then she asked, what is your defining as success? In terms of monetary, if you're defining, he's not successful. But in terms of creativity, if you're talking about, he's very successful. So success that way becomes a very, subjective thing, how we are looking at it, how we are perceiving it. So I think that is a, very interesting take on that, how you perceive success. So that way, coming back to the thing, I think I would call myself very successful. On this side, In monetary judgments, I don't know. Am I a Hussain? I don't know. No.
I think to live a fulfilling life and be engaged with it joyously every moment, that is true success. Nothing else. Yes, sir. Sir, I can't take your question because we are running out of time. So the last question I'll take here.
I think a continuation of what we just discussed to Mr. Ramani. How would you motivate youngsters to take up to art? Forget the materialistic point what we you just mentioned. If somebody comes to you as a person with about 40 years of experience in this field, what is it that will you tell him or her to get motivated to take up this profession?
I would only tell them to kind of pursue with their passion. That's all I think I can say, because it's very difficult, because they're always under pressure from the peers and the family and all that, where art is not, even today, it's not got that kind of recognition or that acceptance. There are a lot of opportunities, there are kids coming into design and so many options are there. So the only way I think they have to do it is to pursue and with a passion. And that also comes with a certain discipline and a lot of hard work. So the only way I tell them is if they come to me for drawing and business, and they all come to me asking me, I want to do collage, I want to learn collage from you. I said, no, you can't do collage now. You have to go through the process, start at the basics. You have to start learning drawing. You go through colors. It is only when you understand line and color, you come into something else, and then you explore collage. Collage is another medium. Okay, but to start, you have to have the basic grammar. It's like if you don't know the basic notes, you can't sing. So it's like that. So the only way I think I can motivate them is to pursue what they want to do.
Fantastic. I think I'll add just one point here, for the benefit of any parents or children who are here. Don't come in the way of your children. Simple. Please don't bring in the economic perspective. Let them find their way. They will fall down again, and they will learn, and that's the way life goes on. Don't bring your insecurities and tell them, என் வாழ்க்கை இப்படி இருந்ததுனால உன் வாழ்க்கை இப்படி ஆயிடக்கூடாதுடா, அதனால நீ ஒரு டிகிரி வாங்கிக்கோ, போய் இன்ஜினியரா போய் சேரு, ஃபைனான்ஸ் அக்கௌண்டண்டா போய் சேரு, நல்ல சம்பளம் கிடைக்கிறது. Don't go for the sake of சம்பளம். Go for the sake of joy. And push them in that direction. I think they will all sort themselves out. Even if you push them in the wrong direction, sooner than later they will come to this point in life where they will feel totally lost and they will want to follow their bliss. Okay? And I think it's better that they are grateful to you for having allowed them to follow their bliss. Like Ashwin's dad is over here, so the very fact that he allowed his son to set up this bookstore, way back when it was not so cool to follow your bliss. And the fact that he followed his bliss of being an interior decorator way back in 1970, 72. So I think today it's a lot more cool to follow your bliss. I hope it will get cooler. Okay. Sir, I'm very sorry, but I can't take your question. Please don't mind me. No? Okay. So thank you. So we just have 4 more minutes before we do our wrap. So this will be a real rapid fire, the questions. So be quick with your answers, and over to you, Venki. So if he's been looking at his phone, it's mainly to ask questions.
Okay, we'll keep it hopefully short, breezy, and somewhat easy. First question. This is a Sanskrit phrase. It says Yatra Pratibha Avsara Prapnoti, which means where talent meets opportunity. Where famously will you see this phrase? The phrase is inscribed on something. Yes.
It's a Mumbai Indians team. Oh, so IPL please.
That's the correct answer. It's on the IPL trophy, which either Kohli or Warner will lift tomorrow. Yeah. So you will do the prizes.
Can I request Parandaman?
Yeah, Parandaman, please. So your name?
Sanjay.
Sanjay, please come forward and receive your special Bliss Catcher
On
mark.
behalf of Odyssey,
Thank you.
Parandaman will hand over the.
Parandaman is the wonderful manager of this wonderful store. Thank you, Sanjay. Good. I thought nobody would get that.
Second question. Various railway stations in India have codes of 2, 3, 4 letters, etc. So Bangalore is SBC, Chennai Central is MAS, and so on. Which town in Tamil Nadu has a railway code which is CAPE, and why?
Cape Comorin.
That's correct. So I think I heard him first, so we'll give it to him.
Right.
Kanyakumari, because the old name of Kanyakumari was Cape Comorin. So Kanyakumari, incidentally, it's probably the only pronounceable English word station code in India. Cape.
Okay. But why 4 letters as an exception?
There are a bunch which have 4 letters and so on, but this one is interesting because it's an actual word and it's from the old name of the town and not the new name.
Fantastic.
So,
Sir, who parent?
Venkatesh.
Venkatesh. Thank you.
Get a special copy of the book.
Yeah, my book. Yeah. Yes. Third question.
third question. The currency of the country, the African country Botswana, is Pula. P-U-L-A, Pula. What does Pula mean in the local language? Something that's pretty valuable or vital to Botswana.
Goats.
Not goats, good try.
Diamond?
No, not diamond. Something very fundamental, but something that they value very much. Water, that's correct. Or rain or water. That's correct.
Very good.
Pula means rain or water.
I think it's one of our regular Bliss Catcher guests. He's here for most of our Bliss Catchers. So, edition. So, thank you, Ati, and you win your mug. Yes.
And closing with one more IPL question. These several people have played for multiple IPL teams in the last 9 seasons of the IPL. These 2 cricketers have played for 4 different IPL teams in the last 9 years. But very coincidentally or very funnily, both of them have played for the same 4 franchises. So whenever they've played, they've been teammates. They've played for 4 different teams. Both of them come from the same state in India. Yes.
Robin Uthappa should be one.
Yes, and the other one is
Get to the other one.
Manish Pandey.
Manish Pandey. That's correct. So Robin Uthappa and Manish Pandey have always played together in all the teams that they played. Mumbai Indians, RCB, Pune Warriors, and now KKR. So well done. The 2 people answered the question between them. So yeah, one of you can read the book and pass it on to the other.
Special case, can we give a book to one of them?
No, I'll prefer the book to be given to him. I've got a copy already.
You've got a copy already. Okay.
So maybe you can
That's
give
very
the
generous.
book to
Anurag, is it? Who are the people who answered? One is Satish and then Manichandar.
Yeah.
So you can give the book to Manichandar and Satish can get the book.
Yeah.
If you've already read the book, please pass it on. Satish, yeah. Thank you for coming, Satish. Thank you. Yeah, please, for our guests for being here today, Ramani and Venki, you both also win a beautiful one. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you everybody for being here. I'll just do a quick wrap. I think the two stories were fascinating. Ramani's oozes in every pore the joy of doing what you've been doing for 40 years now. And I think when I was probably half my age, I used to look at people much older and wonder, why is it that experience counts? Why isn't age counting? You know, why isn't youth counting? You know, that hot blood was there in me. But now I love the fact that I'm growing older. Okay? And when I look at people like Ramani and I think to myself that look at the experience speak. You know, so I think that's phenomenal. And at the same time, we have young Venki over here, and look at the clarity of thought. You know, I wasn't so clear with what he is clear about when I was his age. No way. So phenomenal clarity of thought. Thank you. You know, the fact that I don't want to end up going to take up a job, so I'll do anything to keep the business model running, but staying with my core. The most important compromise that people end up making is diluting the core. And I think as long as we don't dilute the core, we will always be happy. We do have, Ati, I can't let you speak, I'm sorry, but I'm really out of time. We do have a new tradition that's kind of started at the Bliss Catchers series, which is people are writing in to us. And anybody here who's a Tirukural expert? Anybody? So please forgive me if my Tirukural rendition is going to be wrong, or help me along if you recall the Tirukural that I'm going to recite right now. So somebody wrote to us, she's not here, her name is Janani, she's again one of our regulars at the Bliss Catcher series, and she said that she loves Bliss Catchers because, and she quotes the Kural, okay? And I look at my card here. Sevikku unavu illada podu சிறிது வயிற்றுக்கு ஈயப்படும். ஈயப்படும். Okay, thank you for helping me there. Which basically means that we need to fill up our stomachs only if we don't have enough good food for our ears. And she says that, you know, she thoroughly enjoys being at Bliss Catchers. I thank her for writing in and sharing her thoughts with us. We enjoy doing Bliss Catchers because both Vani and I enjoy curating the series, talking to guests. And recently I encountered a very interesting company called Sevenly. Sevenly is a company based in California, run by a 28-year-old entrepreneur. Okay, his name is Dale Partridge, and Dale says that, and so it goes back to Seth Godin's point. But why do you need a vacation if you can set up a life that you don't need to escape from? Okay. So Dale draws on that point, and he says, we all try to take maximum 50 vacations in a lifetime. Okay, we end up taking about 50 vacations in a lifetime if you're lucky. Okay, and he says, have you ever thought of what happens to the remaining 25,000 days in between those vacations, which adds up to an average lifespan of 68 years? Okay, so he says, go get a life, and I would add to it my own little submission. Go get a life that you love. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us. And hopefully, Sunrisers Hyderabad will win tomorrow. He's an RCB fan, so I'm really keep back.